everyone, and welcome to our latest edition of BookTrib Live, a Merrill Mouse Media production. And today we are thrilled to chat with Shaghayegh Farsijani, the author of The Burden of My Red Lips in Tehran, which is an eye-opening look into what life was really like for young women during the most heated years of Iran's modern history. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Shaghayegh is a former reporter and anchor turned author and poet. She was taken back to Iran at age 15 when her father decided to uproot the family from Brooklyn, New York. Upon her return, she traveled the world extensively and decided to share her story as a young woman growing up in Iran. Don't forget to enter to win a copy of The Burden of My Red Lips in Tehran on BookTrib after the chat. So, before we begin our questions, can you tell us a bit more about The Burden of My Red Lips in Tehran?
Well, like you said, Sophia, this book is basically about the lives of female teenagers in Tehran, especially with an extra layer of myself that I was a female teenager from Brooklyn that was completely westernized. And then when my father made the unilateral decision to take me back to Tehran, I had to explore my teenage years in a very closed society in Tehran. So it's basically an eye-opening look on everything that really goes on in the society, especially for female teenagers, and what they go through and how they're limited and how they actually break through all those limitations and really live their teenager lives plus post-university to the fullest.
Mm-hmm. So you're saying that you're talking about how the teenagers in Tehran have all these limitations. Does the current Islamic regime inhibit teenagers from drinking and partying?
Yeah, well, it's not the regime, it's just Islam. In Islam, in that religion, there's alcohol, it's forbidden. So there's no alcohol in that particular religion, and the country of Iran is an Islamic country, so they do prevent them from drinking alcohol as Muslims, but or whoever follows Islamic faith in that country, but they do prohibit from certain kind of parties. So, the ones that we see here where we don't wear a veil like similar to this, and we're drinking and we're wearing a mini skirt, that's definitely prohibited because, again, it's like the Islamic Republic of Iran. Right. And so it is a Islamic country, so all the Islamic rules are taken into account.
Right. So what do teenagers do for fun in Iran?
Well, teenagers do a lot for fun, but the twist is that teenagers, similar to myself, have figured out ways to having fun because although, the country and its religion is much respected, teenagers have figured out ways that they want to do what they want to do. They have those parties and they have their boyfriends and they do drink and they do watch uncensored movies and they do have fun. But it's really in an underground New York City-like society that they've created for themselves that they figured out ways how to do stuff post-revolution.
Right. So how did you find the clash of cultures when moving back to Iran after having been raised in New York City, and how did you adjust to all that?
A killer. It was a killer. I went into ups and downs and coma. I went into like a cultural coma when I went to Tehran because I was completely Americanized. I was the girl, that Brooklyn gal that played basketball on the court and like checking out six packs on guys and went to parties, the ones that my dad could allow me to go to. And I had a very strong opinion about what I wanted to choose. I felt like, I have to learn, and then once I've educated myself on whatever I want to choose, then I choose. Nobody can force anything on me, and I'm not born into anything. So with that kind of opinionated, personal attitude, I went to Tehran, and in Tehran, again, you have to do some stuff. And the ones that you have to do, like you have to wear a veil when you go outside, and you have to, you basically can't really go out on quote unquote dates in Tehran. So, and in the book I have how we went out on those dates, what we had to do, if we had to have enough money in our pockets, if the religious cops basically caught us. And, but you figure out ways to do stuff. But for me as a Brooklynite teenager, it was a living hell at the beginning. but then I figured my way out, and you figure your way out and you have fun.
Definitely. Are the cultural pressures the same for teenage girls as they are for teenage boys in Iran, or different?
No, teenage guys are a little bit different. I mean, they have more space, I could say. I mean, if dating is not allowed for girls, it's not allowed for guys either. Dating is not a very accepted way of being. But then again, if they found out that a guy went out on a date, it wouldn't be as bad as if a girl went out on a date. Just like, guys are a little bit more liberal, and, they can go out and they don't have to tell their parents where they're going, and they could wear a little bit more, liberated clothing, shorts, and maybe, crop shirts and stuff. But they had restrictions as well. But if they got caught, it wouldn't be half as bad as if the girl got caught.
Interesting. Very interesting.
Yeah.
So knowing Iranian youth is looking forward to advancing into a modern culture, how do they express their frustrations and react toward the societal restrictions?
As you've seen, I mean, I don't ever get political because the book is really a non-political book. But as you see in the media today, they really voice their opinions. The ones that have had it, they voice their opinions. And in answer to them voicing their opinions, you see the religious cops taking action. Sometimes it can lead to arrest when you voice too much of your opinion. It's, again, it's an Islamic country, so you can't really voice whatever it is on your mind. And that was another thing I had to take into consideration because I also was a reporter in the federal news agency in Tehran. So, reporters have to stay, you have to really be unbiased.
Right.
Excuse me, you have to be biased. But that said, I had to have an extra layer of being really careful of what I said.
Definitely. Would you ever move back to Tehran, or if you? Separate question, have you visited since you left?
I would not go back to Iran because my formula would not survive in Tehran. Being opinionated, being ambitious, being adventurous, wanting to explore different angles of who I am and what I could offer and my potential, my formula would either get arrested or really, really suffer in Tehran. And so, in answer to your question, the simple answer is never.
So you haven't visited either since you left?
No, I've visited. But when I visit, the duration of my visits, it's mainly 3 days. I usually visit if there's a wedding. I go and have a little celebration with my cousins or whoever is there right now with my friends, which is really zero right now. But not right now. I don't want to visit even right now.
How are the friendships and peer pressures in Iran as compared to teenage life in the U.S.?
There's a lot, in the U.S., for example, a very simple example is, we have sex education here. We have extracurricular activities after school or during school. We have prom nights. We have different types of groups and getting together within those groups that would allow us to connect or get to know one another better. In Iran, it's, the girls have their own class and the guys have their own class. The girls, even in schools, it's girls separate, guys separate. It's only when they go to university, the girls sit up front and the guys sit in the back. So it's always the brothers are separated and the sisters are separated. And that really creates kind of a heaviness within the culture because you want to get to know, your opposite sex, and there's no problem with getting to know it.
Definitely. So is the teenager experience different depending on family culture and conservativeness itself? Do young people experience an extreme difference from the private and public cultures in Iran?
Yeah, teenagers in different cultural classes in Iran definitely have different ways of blending into the society. Many of the parents of some open-minded or non-so conservative families, they allow their teenagers to go to parties, and some parents do allow their parents to have boyfriends. I had a friend whose parents were well aware of her boyfriends and whatever party she went to, and we had families that didn't accept this, so the girl had to go through hoops in order to strategize to get out of the house. And then when you got out, you have to be really careful that you don't get caught by the komites, which are the religious crowds in the street. So, and then you had families that were really, really traditional and forget everything. It's just like you go to school, you come back home, you have little girl sauna parties, something like that.
Right. So you've been saying there are all these differences between the US and Iran, but did you find any similarities between
Yeah,
like
absolutely.
Brooklyn and Tehran?
Oh my God. If I were to relive two periods of my life, it would be my childhood years in Brooklyn and my teenager years in Tehran. They were the best years, even though maybe the beginning months in Tehran were a bit difficult for me because I was so immersed in the culture here. But once you get used to it and you find that, oh my God, these guys are so cool. They're so warm. They're so affectionate, so loving. And in Brooklyn, I grew up in an Italian Jewish neighborhood, so the cultures are kind of the same. And we had the same type of people. There was a lot of diverse, diverse groups of people to meet and, familiarize yourself with. They're both very, very vibrant cities. They're both happening. There's a lot going on.
Mhm. Did you have any sort of identity crisis when you went to Tehran? I mean, that's such a big, drastic change, you know.
I did. I had a huge identity crisis when I went to Tehran, and in light of being a teenager, I also couldn't figure out, how to do stuff in the society, the way that the society accepts it. And it came to the point where I said, okay, so this is me. I'm going to voice my opinion. Like, for example, I remember there was prayer, and I didn't want to do the prayer. And you have to do the group prayer, which is, at 12 o'clock p.m., there's a group prayer, or whenever, the sun is high in the sky. And, I objected to the point that I stood there pretending to pray when I was singing a Madonna song. And this is all in the book because it really hurt me that I had to pretend, because I never pretend. Why would I pretend? Just like sit outside and have a breath of fresh air and not sing like a virgin while you're sitting in line of prayer.
Yeah. Yeah. So, how did it feel when you returned to New York? Was it the same sort of identity crisis, culture shock kind of thing?
It was. When I returned to New York, I'm not going to give everything away of how that
Yeah.
story ended because I'm writing the follow-up, but I did have.
I think the video is frozen, but while we're waiting for it to unfreeze, don't forget to enter to win a copy of The Burden of My Red Lips in Tehran on BookTrib after the chat. Um, and yeah, it looks like it's ready to come back. Oh. Hmm. Sorry about this.